Today we're going to talk about simplifying radicals. And a radical is the same thing as a square root. Okay, it's a fancy math name radical we use for that. When we talk about simplifying radicals, I'm not talking about taking the square root of 100 and simplifying it down to 10. We're talking about the radicals that are not nice square roots, that can't just be made into a whole number, but we can break it down a little bit to make it simpler than what it is. And we'll take a look at some examples. So up here I have 3 examples. If we take a look at the first one, the square root of 24. Now if I take the square root of 24, it doesn't come out to a whole number. This is not something that we can just say, okay, whatever the square root of 4 is, or 24 is this. But we can break it down to make it a little simpler. And the way to do that is we take 24, what 2 numbers multiply to 24? And there's more than one, but we think about 2 numbers where one of them might be a nice square root. And what comes to mind is 6 and 4. That makes 24. So we can change this radical to the square root of 6 times 4, which would also mean the square root of 6 times the square root of 4. So I just broke that square root of 24 down into smaller numbers, not changing the problem at all. Now the square root of 6 I still can't do anything with, but the square root of 4 we know is 2. So this goes to 2, and I still got my radical 6. Now the square root of 6, the only thing I can break down to 6 and 1 or 3 and 2. Neither of those are going to give me a nice answer. It's not going to help me break it down any further. So this square root of 24 is now simplified to 2 square root 6. That is a simplified radical. That's considered simplified from root 24. Now if we take a look at another example, if I have the square root of 56, again, not a nice square root, not something we just break down to a whole number right away, but let's think of some numbers that multiply to 56, and possibly if one of them is a nice root, so we can break this down. What comes to mind to me right away when I think about the square root of 56, well, I can make 56 by multiplying what 2 numbers together. Think about what you can multiply together to make that 56. Not as easy as before, but there's still some numbers that work out. So if you think about it, break it down, what it comes down to is 14 and 4. And the reason I use those is because 4, again, gives me that nice square root. So we get the square root of 14 times 4, same as the square root of 56. That becomes the square root of 14 times the square root of 4. And the square root of 4 we know is 2. So the square root of 14 times 2. 14 does not break down into anything else. It breaks down to 7 and 2 or 14 and 1. Any of those numbers are not helping us. So my final simplified answer now is 2 square root 14. Okay, so the pattern to solve these is really breaking down the number, getting one of those smaller numbers to come out to a nice square root, and make this simplified. Last example we'll do together is the square root of 200. Okay, so if I take a look at the square root of 200, you might think, okay, can I take the square root of 200 evenly? No, it's going to give you a decimal. Okay, but you can, again, break it down and get a simplified answer. So right away in my head, I want to break it down as, okay, 200 I can multiply 100 and 2, and if I do 2 times 100, I'm going to get 200. What's nice about that is that we know 100 is a nice square root. So if I take the square root of 100 times 2, break that down to square root of 100 times the square root of 2, and I know the square root of 100 is 10. Square root of 2 that's as simple as we're going to get. So my final answer, simplified final answer, is 10 square root of 2. So that's the process you're going to follow when I ask you to simplify these radicals. This is what we're talking about. Break it down, this bigger number in the square root, break it down to some smaller numbers that we can maybe get a nice root out of, and simplify it down to these smaller number answers. So I'd like you to now try this one on your own, and we'll go over it in class tomorrow. Good luck.